Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and finish up the couple of problems that we didn't get to on the mean, median, mode, and range. So I'll just run through these real quick since we already went over one of these. So if you have all these test scores, you have 8 test scores here, 86, 93, 60, 66, 95, 83, 85, and 78. And they want you to find the range, mean, median, and mode of the scores. So the first thing you do is put the scores in order from least to greatest. So that's what I did. And there are 8 of them. And so the range, to find the range of a group of numbers, you're going to subtract the smallest number from the biggest number. So 95 minus 60 is 35. That is the range of these numbers. That's how far apart they can be. All right, the median is the middle number, but since there are an even number of numbers here, there is no middle number because the middle is right there between, there's 4 on each side. So you can't, there is no middle number, but to find the median, you add the 2 middle numbers and divide by 2. So you add 83 plus 85 and divide by 2, and that is going to give you 84. So the 84 is the median. The mode is the number that occurs the most often, and there is no mode because they all appear once, and that's it. So there is no most popular number. There is just no mode. And then the mean is the average, so you add all the numbers up and divide by how many numbers there are, and if you do that, you will get 80.75. All right, so there's one more problem on that lesson. The mean of 5 numbers is 10. 4 of the numbers are 2, 8, 11, and 14, and you're supposed to find the 5th number. Okay, so remember that mean means average. So all that means is that you have to add up all the numbers and divide by how many numbers there are. So that's what the mean or average is. It's the sum of all the numbers divided by how many numbers there are. Well, in this problem, they tell you that there are 5 numbers and that their mean is 10. So in this problem, you know that the mean is 10, and you know that there are 5 numbers. So really what you don't know is how much the numbers add up to. All right, so if you look at that equation right there, mean equals sum of numbers divided by the number of numbers, what that means is if you multiply the mean by the number of numbers, you will get the sum. All right, because you have a quotient equals to the dividend divided by the divisor. And so when you multiply both sides of that equation by the denominator of the right side, you get mean times number of numbers equals the sum of the numbers. So if you don't know the sum of the numbers, is what I'm saying, but you do know the mean and you do know how many numbers there are, then you can figure out what the sum of the numbers are just by multiplying the mean or the average times how many numbers there are. All right, so we've got the mean of 10, we got 5 numbers, so they must add up to 50. And we know that the numbers, we know 4 of the numbers are 2, 8, 11, and 14. So we're supposed to be finding the 5th number. So 2 plus 8 plus 11 plus 14, okay, that's the sum of 4 of the numbers. Then there's one number we don't know, so we'll call it x. So if we add up all those numbers, we should get 50 because they told us the mean is 10 and there are 5 numbers. All right, so mean times how many numbers there are tells us the sum of all the numbers. So 10 times 5, 50, is equal to 2 plus 8 plus 11 plus 14 plus x. And so now if we just multiply that and add those numbers up, we get 50 equals 35 plus x, so x must be 15. So that must be the 5th number. Because if you add up 2 plus 8 plus 11 plus 14 plus 15, you get 50. And if you divide 50 by 5, which is how many numbers there are, you get 10, and they told us the mean is 10. All right, so this is the key equation here, is where if they tell you the mean and you know how many numbers there are, you can multiply those two things to figure out how much the numbers must have added up to. All right, so that is the end of that lesson, lesson 45. Now we'll move on to lesson 46. So we're talking about, in this lesson, we're talking about conjunctions. We talk about the numbers that are greater than 5. We say x greater than 5. That means all the numbers, x, whatever they are, that are greater than 5. if we want to talk about the numbers that are less than 10, we would say x is less than 10. Okay? All numbers less than 10. If we wish to designate the set of numbers that are both greater than 5 and less than 10, that we could either write x is greater than 5 and x is less than 10. So we could write two inequalities with the word and in between them to indicate that we want to talk about only these particular numbers, the numbers that are greater than 5 and less than 10, both. They have to be both. Or we can write it as a conjunction without the word and. We can put the x in the middle and arrange the less than signs so that we have 5 is less than x, which is less than 10. So this conjunction right here shows us all the numbers that are between 5 and 10. X is greater than 5 and less than 10, because you can see that the x is by the open mouth on the less than sign to the left of it. So 5 is less than x, meaning that x is greater than 5. And then also x is less than 10. So with that one statement, using the two less than signs, we're able to say both things at the same time. We're able to say x is greater than 5 and less than 10. That's called a conjunction. So that's how we would want to write that information. That's how we would want to talk about those numbers that are greater than 5 but less than 10. So that's called a conjunction. We want to talk about all the numbers that are fulfilling both of those limits, both of those criteria. All right. So those numbers, if we were going to graph that conjunction, we would talk about the numbers that are greater than 5. So we put an open circle on 5. Unfortunately, this is not the right number line for this problem. So assume that there's 7, 8, 9, 10. Sorry about that. So to graph this conjunction, we're going to graph the numbers that are between 5 and 10. X is greater than 5 and less than 10. So we'd put an open circle on 10 and an open circle on 5, and we would color in between those two circles because we don't want it to equal 5 or 10. We want it to be greater than 5 and less than 10. So that's the set of numbers that is both of those things. All right, so here's another conjunction. -2 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 4. So in this inequality here, you can see that x is by the open mouth on the less than sign to the left of it. So x is greater than -2 and x is less than or equal to 4. So we're saying two things at the same time when we use this kind of notation. We're saying a conjunction. Two things we want to be true about x. We want x to be greater than -2, so I'm going to put an open circle on -2. And we want x to be less than or equal to 4. So we put a closed circle on 4 because we want it to be less than or equal to, so equal to is allowed. And then we want all these numbers in here, the numbers that are less than or equal to 4 and greater than -2. All right, write the conjunction which describes the graph. So in this problem, you can see that there's an open circle on 0, so we want x not to equal 0, and then all the numbers that are less than 0, but also greater than -5. That's what that graph represents. So we want to say, we're going to put x in the middle, and we're going to say that x is less than 0, and -5 is less than or equal to x. X is greater than or equal to -5. So that's what this conjunction right here says. X is greater than or equal to -5. There's a closed circle on -5, so we want to include -5, so we put less than or equal to. And x is less than 0. So both of those things are included in this way of writing it. All right, when the conjunction, write the conjunction that designates the numbers that are greater than -1 and less than or equal to 5. All right, so again, your x is going to be in the middle, and the smaller number, the -1, is going to go down here because x is going to be greater than -1. In other words, x -1 is going to be less than x. So it says numbers that are greater than -1. So that's what we have right here. -1 is less than the numbers. And then also these numbers need to be less than or equal to 5. So x is less than or equal to 5 and x is greater than -1. So this is how we would write it. We would put the smaller number down here, put x in the middle, and put the big number over here, and the signs point to the left because you're saying -1 is less than x and x is less than or equal to 5.